Hi, Wayne Emmons here. I have a question for you. Does the church love Jesus Christ as Jesus loves the church? During the next few minutes, we will be looking at how the modern day church has actually betrayed her biblical calling and some ways she can return to her proper role and function. Stay tuned. I want to encourage you to take notes during this presentation. Several scriptures will be referenced, and you may want to read them for yourself in your personal Bible. Also, you will occasionally see a number flash on the screen that corresponds to a reference list at the end of today's presentation. The number of megachurches in America has increased significantly in the past few decades, many with attendance in the thousands. Christian colleges are growing, Christian books are selling in the millions, and Christian radio and television stations can be heard virtually anywhere across the land. Yet all these visible indicators are misleading because something else is going on that tells a disturbing story. National church attendance in the U.S. is steadily on the decline, from 41% down to 36% just in recent years. And the median-sized church is only 70 congregants. Churches have experienced loss in membership, while they can no longer seem to agree on things as simple as the biblical definition of marriage, sexual behavior outside of marriage, abortion, and other issues. And also, despite billions of dollars and millions of hours, the U.S. is less reflective of Christian values than ever before. America is in serious trouble today. The same indicators that heralded the fall of great nations throughout history are now present all around us. What are some of these indicators? Let's see. The sexual behaviors widely accepted and practiced in America today include group sex, homosexuality, same-sex marriage, adultery, fornication, and much more. The Bible is clear that rejecting biblical standards of sexual morality brings judgment on a nation. God's blessings will not reside on any nation that rejects his moral standards. America, as well as other Western nations, are guilty of doing so. Sadly, murder abounds in America today. Whether it is taking the life of a baby in the womb, young men and gangs killing each other and innocent bystanders, or extinguishing the elderly and handicapped through euthanasia. There are nearly 50 murders daily across the United States, and we are now in a condition the Bible describes as, in those days, everyone did what was right in his own eyes. America spends more on education than nearly any other nation in the world, and yet 19% of the high school graduates are illiterate after 12 years of school, even with an average of $140,000 per student. God blesses a nation. It lends rather than borrows. The current federal debt is $23.3 trillion, and the U.S. Congress is intending to increase it even more. This means that every American will have to come up with an additional $71,000 in taxes in order to cover this debt. But wait, with approved future obligations, referred to as debt equity, each person in America will have to pay an additional $300,000 beyond their annual taxes. Webster defines decadence as moral or cultural decline as characterized by excessive indulgence in pleasure or luxury. When a nation loses her conscience, a threshold of embarrassment largely disappears. What does it take to cause many to become ashamed when good is seen as evil and evil is seen as good? One can certainly blame the aggressive secularists who show up everywhere and demand removal of anything that offends them. No doubt, each of these have contributed much to our demise as a nation. But have you heard this? America is in deep trouble today, primarily because the church as a whole has become impotent and irrelevant. She no longer functions collectively as salt and light. If you are not sitting down, you may want to do so, because you are about to hear what should be some startling information. We're going to look at how the church collectively is currently failing worldwide, nationally, and locally. We will then look at how we as individual Christians should be more engaged. Are you aware of the existence of the World Council of Churches, the WCC? It is a large organization that spreads over 110 countries, and it has membership of 349 church organizations that includes the Lutherans, Methodists, Baptists, Evangelicals, and Pentecostals. They join to, quote, work together in the spirit of tolerance and mutual understanding. That sounds pretty good, right? But wait. In July 2021, WCC initiated visits to families in South Hebron, Israel to, quote, discern the nature of hardships and trauma that the occupation, the Jewish people, continues to cause. And then in September of the same year, WCC hosted a webinar on, quote, focused displacement of Palestinians from East Jerusalem. How is it that the church collectively is so ignorant about what the Bible says regarding how God gave the land of Israel to the Jewish people as an everlasting covenant? But wait, there's more. Are you aware of the National Council of Churches in the USA? An integral part of the organization's mission is to, quote, how to live in this religiously plural and culturally diverse time. Sounds good. But wait, this large organization of over 100,000 congregations, including Protestants and evangelicals, implies that a one-world religion is needed. The NCC frowns on white supremacy while placing a focus on world peace. Their website also states, quote, we reject proselytism as having any place in interreligious engagements. I don't know. I truly wonder what Jesus Christ thinks of all this. And also, what about his 12 disciples, 11 of whom died brutal deaths for proselytizing, and the other was imprisoned for the rest of his life on a remote island of Patmos? George Barna is a devout, Bible-believing, Bible-practicing Christian concerned about the condition of the church. His company, the Barna Group, is known as a go-to source for insights about faith and culture, and for developing one of the nation's most comprehensive databases on spiritual indicators. Research by the Barna Group has concluded that while more than 90% of conservative pastors agree that the Bible addresses specific issues such as abortion, same-sex marriage, gambling, immigration, and so forth, only 10% of the pastors are willing to address these issues from their pulpit. Barna reports they are concerned about being seen as political, not wanting to take the risk of losing people or donations, as well as losing status of the church's nonprofit designation. The classic line used by many pastors for not addressing these specific biblical issues is, "I just preach Jesus." And the implication is that if you focus on specific cultural topics, you take the focus away from Jesus Christ. While preaching Jesus is an absolute requirement, preaching Jesus only is not. Specific sinful acts must be called out for what they are. And when pastors measure their own value to their church, mostly based on church attendance and finances, the possibility of offending tithe-paying members leaving the church weighs heavily on them. They will avoid unpopular topics even though the prophets, the Apostle Paul, and Jesus Christ address these topics specifically. And listen, we need to talk about this. Every church pastor needs to earnestly pray for a vision and mission for their local church. A vision and mission that's firmly grounded in the Bible. Each church location is blessed to reach certain people. And for example, a church downtown may not be as equipped to influence people in the farmland areas. And this in no way implies watering down the message of the Bible. This should never be done. But on the other hand, I'm referring to a presentation issue. With a prayerfully documented written vision and mission statement, the pastor and key leaders should prayerfully establish strategic objectives, goals, and measurements that reflect progress toward the vision and mission. Very few churches do this. Satan does. Now, what do church congregations say they want to hear from their pastors? Again, the Barna Group's research uncovered some startling information. Surveys produce a list of prioritized topics, and here are the top 7 by priority. Only 14% of professing Christians read the Bible on a daily basis. Only 6% of Americans have a major life goal of being a better Christian, and only 2% claim to have a good relationship with God. Personal evangelism is dying. Only 39% of born-again Christians feel a responsibility to share Christ with others. According to Pew Research Center, the basic theological beliefs of America's born-again Christians are troubling. Half believe Jesus sinned while on earth. More than half believe the Bible does not contain absolute moral truths. 60% believe someone can earn his or her way to heaven by being good. 62% do not share their faith with others. 67% believe people can get to heaven without Jesus. 2 out of 3 Christians say they are hungry for pastoral guidance regarding cultural and political issues. Indeed, multiple studies have shown that one of the primary reasons people are dropping out of church in record numbers is because they believe it to be irrelevant to life these days. For years, Christians and Christian leaders have been aware of the general ways in which the enemy has moved America in the wrong direction, and Satan has used clandestine weapons of all types, including public schools that indoctrinate our children with topics they have no business doing, college professors that brainwash our young adults, Hollywood's glorification of all kinds of filth, normalization of homosexuality, cohabitation, fornication, transgenderism, and yes, even unbiblical Supreme Court rulings. But how many Christian leaders have been the watchmen God told them to be? How many have taken a stand, loudly proclaiming and sounding the alarm and boldly warning against these specific dangers? A shepherd is one who lays down his life for his sheep, but a simple hired hand sees the wolf coming and escapes while leaving the sheep for the wolves. With all the dangers coming at Christians in recent years, did pastors and church leaders place themselves in front of the charging wolves? Or did they turn and hide in the bushes? Don't forget these statistics shown earlier while considering your answer. Look, Jesus won't speak up for us if we won't speak up for him. We see this in Matthew 10th chapter, 32nd, 33rd verse. But sadly, as already noted, only a third of Christians share their belief with others. It seemed futile to sing Onward Christian Soldiers or any other praise song inside the church while failing to get out on the battlefield for the Lord outside the church. I once heard a preacher ask his audience, if you were someday arrested for being a Christian, and he said it may be sooner than later, would there be enough evidence to convict you? Wow, what an interesting question, especially considering the evidence heard during this broadcast. But there is yet another solution to help with the dilemma of churches. America would never have become a great nation had it not been for the direct involvement of pastors in the affairs of our nation. These early American pastors were merely following countless biblical examples. Here are a few. Elijah confronted King Ahab and Queen Jezebel. Isaiah came against King Hezekiah. Eliezer and Jehu confronted King Jehoshaphat. John the Baptist called out King Herod. Samuel confronted King Saul. Daniel confronted Nebuchadnezzar. There is no biblical mandate where God's ministers remain silent regarding domestic and political issues. Indeed, the Bible is loaded with examples of God's ministers speaking in the civic and public arenas. So pastors, church leaders, preach the unvarnished truth about what God says is right and wrong. The benefits of doing so, there will be more souls saved from hell. The dark side, many will be offended. It's a choice, however, that pastors and Christians must make. I am so fortunate that my pastor is one that is not afraid to preach the gospel. But if you are not so fortunate, you need to find you another church. Although I have painted a dismal picture, there is some really good news. Every time a nation needed a revival, she eventually began to spiritually embrace what was originally spiritually fought against. And also, we read the words of Jesus in Matthew 15, chapter 18th verse, when he said, "The gates of hell shall not prevail against the church." So hear this. There are many prayer groups, serious prayer groups, that are functioning throughout America. There are more biblical and evangelical Christians in the U.S. Congress today than at any time in recent years. Countless Bible study and personal accountability groups are meeting on Capitol Hill as well as local government levels. And the number of families choosing to homeschool their children so they can raise them with biblical teachings and values is skyrocketing. The number of pastors who are now beginning to really get it is also increasing. Let me know your comments about today's presentation. There is a window provided below. This is Wayne Ammons helping you find truth, and I hope you will discover it for yourself. May God bless you.